Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, and good morning. I'd like to start by just having a 2-minute sit in honor of the people who were shot yesterday, not too many miles from here. This was one of these people actually knew, but if you watch TV, you knew at least one of them, and that was Minnesota House Democratic leader Melissa Hartman and her husband, fatally shot in their Brooklyn Park home. And State Senator John Hoffman and his wife survived at their home in Champlin in what appeared to be a targeted act of political violence. So let's just sit and open up our hearts to them and their families and their loved ones and everyone for about 2 minutes. So, obviously the person who did this had something in his mind that was overpowering him, something negative. And this is the theme of my talk today is how we get stuck on narrative fallacies. We tend to carry around narrative fallacies, and we get stuck on them. And when I was a boy, I heard the story of the blind man and the elephant, which many of you know. It comes from the Polycanon, actually. And there are 5 blind men, and they don't see the elephant because they can't see. They feel the elephant, and one feels the side of the elephant, and he feels a wall. Another feels the trunk, and he feels a hose, and another feels the tail, and he feels they're all male in this story. He feels a broom, another feels the trunk, and he feels a solid tree, and then they start arguing, and then they start fighting, and then they really hurt each other. And there are different ways of telling the story. So, these narrative fallacies that we carry around because we're blind, and Zen practice is about opening our eyes. These days, even more than ever, when we watch the news, we see different stories, and you know what story. Most of us are attuned to one channel, and or one NPR or something. And others are attuned to Fox News or the Wall Street Journal editorials or something. So we watch the news, we see different stories. The more info we have, paradoxically, the more justified we feel in our point of view. And underneath that all, there's a core truth that there's a calmness and joy beyond the storytelling mind that we can all open up to. In other words, the whole elephant. And if we see the whole elephant, then we don't need to fight over which is the real part of the elephant, the trunk or the side or the tail, because we see the whole elephant. Unfortunately, we concentrate on the things we know. Well, maybe it's from an evolutionary point of view, it's probably important. But from a getting along point of view, no, not so good. We concentrate on the things we know, and we fail to take into consideration what we don't know. The power of what we say to ourselves about our experience is incredible. And if we keep saying it over and over again, it becomes our whole reality, our big reality. So, supposedly the Puritans and the Native Americans at first started out on good terms. We don't know for sure, but there's some literature that suggests they did. But blaming the Puritans, which I don't know if that's appropriately accurate, but blaming them, because we know they left records and the Native Americans didn't. They began simplifying,
I was watching you lock and unlock and relock
categorizing their experience
door
about these
I
strange
should
people.
figure out a different
And as
system
they
for
did
keeping
that,
the key
they
in there. I
began
kind of like
not
that it has a
trusting
hook,
not
but it
trusting
doesn't
them.
come out far enough.
And you know what happened after that? for the
David and
next
Renee wish
hundreds-
you a
several
happy
hundreds of
Father's
years.
Day.
Genocide. So there's a book written in 2007 by Nassim Taleb, T-A-L-E-B, called The Black Swan. Some of you probably know it, and I talked about it once, probably 10 years ago. And he starts his book out by how to learn from the turkey. How to learn from the turkey. He says, the turkey, starting in August, is fed every day lots of really good food by a nice person. I don't know if that's the case. And after about 1,000 days, a change takes place that the turkey was totally unprepared for. Totally unprepared for. And Dr. Taleb also writes about the Titanic. The Titanic used some of the most advanced technology available at the time. It was touted throughout the British press and throughout Britain as the safest ship ever built. So safe that she carried only 20 lifeboats, enough to provide accommodations for only half or 2,000 passengers and crew. They didn't need any more. Since the ship's construction made her unsinkable, her lifeboats were necessary only to rescue survivors rescue survivors of other sinking ships. She was equipped with, and they used the feminine, she was equipped with Marconi's new wireless telegraph system, and the two Marconi operators kept the wireless room in the Titanic running 24 hours a day. 24 hours a day. And this captain was the most seasoned and decorated captain in the whole British Empire. And here's what he said, before he left, that is. In all my experience, I have never been in any accident. I have seen only one vessel in distress and never seen or been party to any situation which could end in disaster of any sort. He said that in 1907. The Titanic sank in 1910 on its maiden voyage. And the boat building company was the Primo One in the British Empire, they made a statement ahead of time that they had 12 risk managers who had used models of the past to tabulate that this was as safe an investment as a human being could make. And many entrepreneurs invested in the Titanic. So after something happens, we continue the narrative fallacy. After the Titanic went down, book after book about how unprepared they were, about how little they'd done in terms of preparing specifically for the Arctic, and book after book after book. So that narrative about what continued, the narrative fallacy continued. So it makes us feel better. It makes us feel better because it seems like it's bound to happen, as with the Titanic. In fundamentalist Hindu causality, karmic causality, there was a whole school of mendicants and practitioners who, if a brick falls on their hand, will think, well, what did I do? What did I do yesterday or last week to cause this to happen? Maybe I was unkind to someone, or I was not taking care of myself. And if they can't find out something in the current lifetime, they go back to the previous lifetime. Oh, what was in the previous lifetime that I did? So again, this need we have to create these stories and be literal about them. Stories are wonderful, but to be literal about them. And in Yogacara, all Yogacara Buddhism, most of our experience is based on our projections, which are based on the ripening of the seeds in our consciousness, which are a result of residue from past experience. So we have residue from past experience that creates seeds in our unconscious. When we have a new experience, those seeds color that experience. And that's called sometimes in Yogacara, a rushing waterfall of bijas, dharmas, and vasanas. Seeds, perfume, and experience. Or I should say, experience, perfume, and seeds, experience, perfume, seeds, on and on. So we're caught. And we maintain that narration, and it gives us some comfort. But it's so limited, and we ended up feeling separate and cut off from each other in the world. Now, after my talk, there'll be coffee. I have to leave because I have to go home, but there'll be coffee or tea, and you're more likely to approach the people that you have good seeds about, you've had a good experience with. You're less likely to approach the people you haven't had a good experience about. And that's natural, and yet the very awareness of that can create the possibility that we can move beyond that. We can move beyond that limitation. So if we realize our storyline is a fallacy, let's say I've had a bad experience with Ben, but it was and he wants to fight me. So I avoid him, but maybe he doesn't really want to fight me. Maybe he just looked at me like this, and maybe because he was in a deep meditation, he went, and so then I think, oh, I go up to him anyway. So I take a risk. There's no point in trying to avoid telling stories about our experience. There's no point in not predicting. Predicting is important. Only realize that they're just stories and embrace the unknown. In early Western medicine, the unknown played a huge role. The positive accident was central to the method of discovery. Louis Pasteur, a French chemist and microbiologist, discovered the principles of vaccination, microbial fermentation, and pasteurization. Accidentally. And here's what he said. In research, don't look for a particular result. Just realize that chance favors the prepared. In research, don't look for a particular result. Just realize that chance favors the prepared. So, but this means being comfortable with the unknown. Being comfortable with the unknown. The possibility that we can experience the whole elephant. But we don't know what the whole elephant is, but it's unknown. That we can settle into a deep quietness beyond our storytelling, which does not kick our storytelling out, which just still enjoys storytelling. And in my third book, I talk about this. The title of my book is Enlightenment is an Accident. Practice makes us accident prone. So we can say a few things about the whole elephant based on the core of Eastern and most indigenous spiritual traditions. But even these things, we just need to be we need to not be sure of ourselves. Because these three are pointing to something beyond this little self that wants to be sure. So we can say, if we look at the Eastern traditions and most indigenous traditions, we can say there's a big reality that includes all and everything. And every atom in the universe, every movement of my eyelid, and the entire universe itself is a manifestation of that. And you can call it an essence if you want, but it's an essence that pervades all existence, and it doesn't know it's an essence. It's beyond all words or divisions. And here is something I think must be in one of my books. Svetataku and his father. This is from pre-Buddhist India. Svetataku and his father. Svetataku comes home to see his father after being with his teacher. And the father says, "Did you ask your teacher for the spiritual knowledge that enables you to hear the unheard, to think the unthought, and know the unknown?" "What is that knowledge, Father?" "Bring me a banyan sea leaf, son." The son did and said, "There are seeds inside, Father, all very small." Father said, "Yes, now break one of these seeds and tell me what you see." "Nothing, Father." "My son, this great banyan tree has grown from a seed so small that you cannot see it. Believe me, an invisible and subtle essence is the whole universe. This invisible and subtle essence is the spirit of the whole universe. That is reality, that is truth, and you, son, you are that." You, son, you are that. Each of us is that. Each of us is that. Just as we are. Just as we are. How could it be different? But don't believe it. Don't turn it into something you hang on to. Right? Just do this practice and you settle into it. Settle into it. And secondly, all is temporary within this ultimate reality, within this big reality. Everything is changing. Waves are particles, particles are waves, wavicles in quantum physics. This is somewhat contrast to cultural spirituality. And of course, all spirituality wears cultural clothes, and those are wonderful. Every religion has its own narratives to establish and nurture distinct philosophical, theological, historical, and even sentimental values. The more similar the beliefs or practices are, the closer to the core we are. But the outer layers are exclusionary by nature. Of course they are. Of course they are. How could it be different? And I'm wearing a rock suit today, and a few of you are too. That's part of our cultural tradition, and we tell many stories. I tell a story to people who are being initiated about the development of the robe and how the robe turned into the rock suit and how Buddha went to the funeral pyre and got the rags and had the monks sew them together. Oh, one of those cool stories. Oh, they're cool stories, but they're cultural, right? They're cultural. And as soon as we reify them, we thingify them, then we start being exclusive rather than inclusive. So there are three main aspects of making ourselves accident prone. There are lots of different aspects, but using a Buddhist framework because I happen to be Buddhist, in case you didn't notice. There are three main aspects. First, the first two steps on the Eightfold Path. We imagine the impossible. First, it's understanding. We understand that we're all connected. We understand that this narrative is just a superficial layer of a great and joyful interconnectedness. We realize that. We read that in a book, and then we have an intention to realize it. So we imagine the impossible, the first two steps of the path. We imagine a stillness, a serenity, a peace beyond. And I imagine that for you. I imagine that for you. Of course I do. Of course I do. And that's a key part. We have to imagine ourselves moving beyond this narrative that we get so fixated on. It causes so many problems, and we have to continue to reimagine it and reimagine it. So we're always coming back to our understanding and our intention. Our understanding and our intention. And the second part is ethical behavior. All of these religious practices in the East and really in the West emphasize ethical behavior. And whether they behave ethically or not is another issue. They emphasize ethical behavior. They do. Speech, action, and livelihood. Speech, action, and livelihood. So, during coffee, I'm leaving. My grandson is only here for 2 days, so that's my excuse. I'm leaving. But go meet with a person you have a negative memory about. Reach out. Create a good seed. Create a good seed. That's ethical behavior. Of course, I'm leaving. But I'm just teasing, you know. Imagining, ethical behavior, and meditation. Meditation is the third. 6, 7, and 8. Effort, mindfulness, and concentration. Meditation, meditation. Through imagining, through ethical behavior and meditation, we stop living our lives just based on negative seeds created from stinky perfume. We create some good seeds, and then we possibly move beyond being clinging to seeds at all. And I'm pretty old, so I've been practicing since I was just a little over 20. So I've done a lot of different practices. Also, I'm kind of a curious person by nature. So mostly I've done Zen Buddhism, mostly. But I also spent about 2 years in San Francisco doing Vedanta, going to the Vedanta Society in San Francisco. Of course, I was doing Zen at the same time, but still. I spent some time doing bhakti practice, doing devotional practice with Amachi, the hugging guru. She used to come in here. I went to see her 3 or 4 times, and then I even went to India to see her. Hugs, I want to tell you, the hugs are the same, whether she's here or there. And then I did Lakota practice for 6 years. I really did with my teacher, Elmer Running, Dio Show. So the key to success is, I've learned this, but you guys know this if you're practicing sincerely, is a willingness to fail. Trial and error, trial and error, trial and error. Apelles, the Roman artist, is known for 2 things: practicing every day and achieving by accident. Practicing every day and achieving by accident. He was so exasperated in trying to depict the foam on the dog's mouth when he was painting a dog. He repeatedly was repainting the scene and then wiping it clean, repeating the scene and then wiping it clean, repeating the scene and then wiping it clean, and finally he threw his sponge at the picture in frustration. It struck the dog's mouth, achieving by accident what the artist could not do by design. So we keep creating circumstances where we're accident prone. That's what we do in our meditation. We keep creating those. And as long as we're continually bringing ourselves back. And instead of being embarrassed or shamed or discouraged, follow Einstein's advice. You need to learn to love to lose. You need to learn to love to lose. You don't need to learn. You need to love to lose. You need to love to lose. And instead of clinging to our narrative fallacy about how things will be in the future based on the past, we put ourselves in situations where favorable outcomes are much larger than unfavorable. And of course, as meditators, we steep ourselves in silence, whether it's daily meditation or retreats or both. And that way we can, at some point, open up to the whole elephant. Maybe at this point. Big reality, which includes our storytelling. Including the trunk, the legs, the tail, the sides. So that's what I want to say this morning. And I'll be happy to entertain questions or comments from anyone. To my left, to my right, or online. Yes.
You said earlier that we should not be too sure of anything.
Mm-hmm.
So how do we say anything? How do we say anything true if we can't be sure of it?
Well, I speak with a lot of vehemence about my experience, but I'm not sure. But does speaking with vehemence and passion mean I need to be sure? I don't think so. When we're sure, we close down. our heart closes down. But if we're going to really speak with vehemence and passion, our heart opens up, and we're not sure. Does that make sense?
No.
No. Okay, well, do you have a follow-up? Do you have a follow-up then?
No, just this big silent scream. It's okay.
Oh. All right. Munch, M-U-N-C-H, with a silent scream. Well, a silent scream is fine. Just let the silent scream be. Ah, help. Carl Munch, M-U-N-C-H, the silent scream. We have some time. We can sit here and steep ourselves in silence. Would you like to do that? Would you guys like to do that? Most of you are hiding. You're just showing me your names. But a few of you are showing your faces.
Tim?
Yes, Carol.
I just wanted to thank you for starting today off with a couple moments of silent meditation and memorandum of what's happening.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome. No, it's hard. It's hard. Yeah, Ron.
Yes. Try to word it in a way that makes some sense to me. Just going over the last 24 hours of my life, I mean, we decided to go to the No Kings parade. Many people from here were there and able to connect with them. Spent the day down there, missed the message saying you shouldn't go to public events. And it was absolutely wonderful, joy-filled, lots of good and creative energy. Posters. I wish I had a book of the posters that you know, especially the one that said if you elected or voted for a rapist, expect to get. I won't say it here, but
If you did what?
if you voted for a rapist, expect to get. And I won't say it here
Oh, yeah.
because you know it's a friendly crowd. But it was powerful to see lots of messages down there. And then in the midst of this, we are notified that Melissa Hortman and her husband have been murdered. An imposter showing up at her door at 3 a.m., I believe. I had the good fortune to work with Melissa, a lovely person, and probably not well liked by everyone. And I probably could say the same thing about myself, you know. But I'm still considering myself a very newcomer here. I probably started attending in November of this past year and have met some of the most wonderful people ever in my 73 years of life. And after all that happened yesterday, I've been meditating on should I become a member or not, and was able to make the decision early this morning when my daughter FaceTimed me to wish me a happy Father's Day, and I just slept right through her FaceTime call. My dream turned into, oh, there's an ice cream truck in the neighborhood, because it made this nice ringing, dinging kind of sound. Like, there's an ice cream truck that's showing up in my dream. How much more pleasant could that be? And my point, if there is one, is as a newcomer, as a person who probably makes way more mistakes than I want to admit, how do I deal with that overwhelming joy yesterday at times, excessive sadness, being told not to even share with another person who had contacted me what the parade, what the march was like, saying, that's political. We to talk about anything political. And to say, it wasn't. It was as lovely as any of the conversations I've had with people here. It was a joyful day and much more of a celebration.
Wonderful, Ron. Thank you. I don't see really a question in there. Thank you for your test.
What do I
test.
do? Do I meditate more?
You meditate all the time.
Right now, about 20 minutes more a day would be meditating a lot more. I am a newbie, so I'm in the...
And you can meditate while you're eating. You can meditate while you're going to the bathroom. You can meditate while you're feeling sad and overwhelmed by what happened yesterday. You can meditate all the time.
Thank you.
Without turning it into a narrative fallacy. I need to meditate all the time.
Jim, to Cato's question, his scream, as well as your point about being sure of ourselves, would you say that being sure of ourselves is a creation of the mind and we should instead rely on the heart instead? Is that what you're pushing us toward?
Say that again. Say the last few words again.
Is being sure of ourselves, is that a creation of the mind? And should we instead rely on the heart rather than the mind?
Well, the problem is that our mind is up here and our heart is down here, and our mind dominates. But sometimes our heart dominates if we're really impulsive. But through meditation, we come to a feeling of heart and mind being interconnected, and that's called heart-mind, where it's both heart and mind. So you don't diss the mind, but it has a feeling component, and the feeling has a thought component. That's heart-mind, and that's another way of talking about the whole elephant. The heart-mind is the heart-mind of the universe. Of course, it includes both thought and feeling. And, without taking this too literally, through our meditation, our mind begins to descend into our heart, where its natural resting place is. And that's heart-mind. But that doesn't cut off our thinking. It sharpens our thinking and relates our thinking to our feeling. Shall I ask you if that makes sense?
I'm only screaming as well. Thank you.
Sure.
So my
Yeah.
thought in response to Cato's comment was, for me, when I can do it, the key is to, even when I am being vehement, is to remember the possibility that I might be wrong or that I might be missing something important. And I have found it useful. It's something I heard here, to tell myself, yes, that's a nice story, but it's just a story.
Good. Good, yeah. It's just a reminder to yourself that every thought is tentative. Good. Yeah.
Yeah, Tim, it's often said that since we painted on the walls of the cave, we've made sense of our experience through stories.
Yes.
When does a narrative, a story, start to cross into a line of fallacy? And how can we sense when that's happening?
Well, that's a good question. Do you have an answer? I'm punting. I'm punting. Do you have an answer?
Well, you talked about layers in a way, and that there's a point at which a story becomes exclusionary, that religions are organized around principles of that many religions share, love, understanding, care, and then at some point they become exclusionary by saying, but we have the truth and you don't. But I'm just thinking more on a more daily, mundane level. We tell ourselves stories in our minds, like you pointed out at the very beginning, so much, but I'm still searching for when that becomes something to be.
When it becomes what?
When it becomes something that you may want to be aware of and avoid, that it's,
Well, we use our stories to protect ourselves. They become rigidified when we're afraid. It's only, and we need to see whenever a story becomes so persistent that it dominates our lives, that's fear-based. So then with our meditation, we can pay attention to that. What's the fear all about? First, we have to see that this story is turning into something dogmatic we're saying to ourselves. Then we have to notice the fear. Then we have to just be with it and see if there's something to show us. And if it's showing us that what we're scared about or why we're protecting ourselves in this way. If it's not, we just keep sitting and we keep inquiring and we keep recognizing. As you said, layers. And the more afraid we are, and this, I'll answer you, I'll have you in a minute. I'm just going to, he's raising his hand. What was I saying? The more scared we are, these are really scary times. I grew up in this country. We've never had any wars in this country. I spent time in Europe, where I've been in Germany when the aftermath of war is all around still. All around. We've never had any. We've been a beacon of hope, and we've felt proud of it. And what's happening now? Well, this is scary. So we want to close down around some narrative that will protect us. But that narrative will make us feel more separate than ever from the elephant itself. So we can explore, and then we begin to crack open. Until another scary thing comes. But right now we're in a really kind of scary cultural time for many, many people in the United States. My daughter has lived in Paris for more than 20 years, and she has never thought she needed to get French citizenship, although her husband and my 2 grandsons have French citizenship. She's working hard on getting French citizenship now, because France now and some of the other countries in Europe are replacing us as the beacon, at least for now. So we've never had to deal with this before, but we can deal with it. We can settle into the whole elephant. If Du Fu could do it in the 9th century in China, when there were thousands of people being slaughtered during a civil war all around him and his wife and family, we can do it. We can do it. Yes.
The easiest point to understand when something becomes a problem or a fallacy, as you put it, is when it does not follow the middle path and acknowledging the merit. Unfortunately, if there is no exclusivity, there is no orthodoxy, there is no protection against subversives. I seem to recall the story of Devadatta, the man who had attempted to kill the Buddha 3 times. And when he failed, he attempted to join and subvert the Buddha's teachings. And the Buddha did turn him away. And he tried to subvert it by introducing more extreme practices in orthodoxy, funnily enough, which is a commentary on how there is a middle path.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Excess,
mm-hmm.
but there is also nothing.
Mm-hmm. That's good. That's not a question, is it? That's good. Thank you. Thank you.
I was commenting on it.
Okay, thank you. Did you have something?
Yes. How, for me, wars need 2 parties. Wars are with focusing the elephant is blue or the elephant is
Yeah,
red.
that's right.
That is where the confrontation comes.
That's right. That's right.
I've been just like having really like a lot of troubles to be opening and express it and calling names this person and calling names the other person and then feel good about my narrative.
Mm-hmm.
I don't identify with that. And sometimes when I talk to other people about like, I don't want it.
Well, good.
Be in this
Well, good.
blue corner and then use
Good.
red.
Good for you.
But more and more people take it like, no, I need to take my corner and I need to defend my corner.
Mm-hmm.
How we full hearts of empathy for whatever color you are.
But you're doing it, aren't you? Meaning you're not withdrawing. You're feeling empathy for both already, aren't you?
I do.
Yeah, so you're doing it. You're doing it.
I don't let, maybe it's because I come from a country
Yes.
where I see so many politics wars.
Yes.
They started with the families.
Yes.
And they go echoes to the community,
Yes.
neighbors and everything.
Yes.
What I see hear people that, I'm afraid to say that I'm a Republican because people like it. And
Yeah.
for me, it's like, no,
Yeah.
it's not the society
Well,
that I
good.
live with.
Good. Thank you.
I want to be one that no one is afraid.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone can express, everyone can
Yes.
have a dialogue about what
Yes.
is my ideas.
Yes.
Same in religions. What is my ideas in religion? What is my idea, without being you're one of the bad ones.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's so easy to jump in that who you want those.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel in myself that sometimes I feel that it's not much acceptance.
There's not much acceptance on their part or on your part.
Any part, in general. Like, this is me, this is my point, boom, this is you, and then everyone is kind of like
Yeah.
proving their point in the table instead of what is the middle ground, what if we can,
Yes.
how we can overcome this, you know, we
Yes.
overcome this.
Yes. Well, only by going inside and finding your own strength and stillness and silence can you be with a lot of craziness outside. And you're doing that, but you're not moving as fast as you'd like to move. Tough. You're, you're making yourself accident prone. You are. You're making yourself accident prone, aren't you?
Every time that we sit down, I feel that is the,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, no expectation, but that is the expectation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Oh. Mm-hmm. Good. Sure. Oh, Cheryl.
I really resonate with what you're saying, and I also feel like, the phrase false equivalency, it has been resonating with me also since in the last 24 hours when we have talked about how our whole community has become, violent and I also think that, there is a truth, there is a place to talk about the truth and still question yourself, and leave open other opinions.
Yes.
And I do think that, our identity, or that's the wrong word, but our commitment here is compassion. And that is not the commitment, the stated commitment of our leaders in this country right now. It's the opposite.
That's right.
Would you say something about that?
Well, you're right. You're right. It's a question of whether you. It's a question of whether you live a fear-based existence or not, and how much that fear-based existence. Any of us do, and how much that fear-based existence dominates your life. And if the fear-based existence dominates your life, you need to feel like you're on top because you're afraid you're going to be overwhelmed. And so your whole life is about being on top. Only by being on top can you survive. Only by being on top can you prevail. which is not our aspiration at all. Our aspiration is the opposite, that we're all interconnected. And our aspiration is to open up to the interconnectedness and support each other, love each other. Something more on that?
Well, I also think that if that's our aspiration and we see, you know, the oppression,
Yes.
the cruelty that we also have,
Mm-hmm.
in order to be true to our beliefs, then we need to resist.
Yes, I agree. Yes. Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And maybe not open ourselves to the other ideas that oppression and cruelty are the way to go.
Mm-hmm. And of course, I mean, Buddha said this, Jesus said this, Mother Teresa said this, so all of the mystics said exactly the same thing that you're saying. It's a question of living it. It's a question of trying to live it, moment by moment, day after day. And that's, yeah. Let's see, how are we doing? Oh, I've got time for one more. If anybody has something. Yeah.
So I have a story about telling myself stories.
Okay.
A while back where I worked, I was tasked by our boss to, on a project to work on with a woman. And
To work on what?
with a woman, with a coworker.
Okay.
So we were supervising a group of people.
Mm-hmm.
And she was really good at one piece of the job, and I struggled with that piece of the job. And so she ended up taking leadership on that piece, but I was telling myself stories about how she felt about me for allowing her to take leadership on that piece.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was telling myself that she was resentful against me, that she was thinking that I wasn't good at my job. I was telling, and I convinced myself, every time I looked at her, I was like feeling like she was looking down at me and like ready to fight, you know. So this started going back and forth with this woman, and I started to talk to her about it once, but that conversation kind of crashed because I was defensive, even though I was trying to talk.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then a while later, I was leaving work, and she was walking out to her car, and we made eye contact.
Mm-hmm.
I could tell by the look on her, just by her face, that she was regretful that this was all happening, and suddenly I just saw what I had done, what I had been doing. That I had been telling I had created this whole narrative in my head about what was going on in this woman's head, and it had nothing to do with her.
Mm-hmm.
And when I realized that, the next day I talked to her, and she's one of my best friends now.
Mm. Good for you. Good for you. Yes. Yes. Uh-huh. Thank you. Thank you. Now I think we'll turn it over to Carol.